Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving deep into a really specific, kind of pivotal moment in football, right after a pretty tough season for Manchester United.
That's right. And our deep dive today, it's all guided by this one core source, an article detailing this pretty remarkable address by the manager, Ruben Amorim.
Yeah, speaking directly to the fans on the pitch.
Exactly. So our mission here is to really get into the significance of his words, just using this article.
Right. What was the context? What was he trying to do in that moment based on this report?
And the scene, I mean, it sets it up perfectly. Old Trafford, May 25th, 2025, final day.
And United had just won, right? 2-0 against Aston Villa.
Yeah, goals from Ahmad and Christian Eriksen, actually. A penalty in his last game for the club. So, a win.
A win, but the article immediately pivots, doesn't it? It contrasts that win with the season overall.
Well, absolutely. The source calls the season disastrous. Stark language.
Disastrous is right. I mean, the report really hammers home the final league position, 15th place.
15th. Which, it notes, is their worst finish since, 73 foot 74?
Yeah, and their lowest ever in the Premier League era. That's bad.
And that's not all. This game, this final day win, it happened just 4 days after they lost the Europa League final.
Ah, right, to Spurs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, compounding the disappointment.
Exactly. So the context for this speech, it's absolutely crucial. It's not a celebration.
No, far from it. It's an address at the end of, like you said, a historically bad season.
And we should probably mention Amorim himself. The article says he only took over in November.
Right, succeeding Erik ten Hag. So he wasn't there for the start of the disaster, but he certainly lived through most of it.
He definitely saw the worst of it, yeah. So the final whistle blows on this, deeply frustrating season.
Results are what they are. And the article says, instead of just heading off, Amorim goes onto the pitch, towards the fans.
Yeah, confronts the moment. And what does the source say were his very first words?
But what's really striking is the immediate acknowledgement. The report says straight up an apology.
An apology first.
Yep, for the season. And explicitly acknowledging the fans' disappointment with him and with the team.
Wow. Starting with an apology after that kind of season.
Hmm.
That feels significant. More than just standard stuff.
It really does. It sets a tone, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like he's trying to meet them where they are emotionally.
Absolutely. Not making excuses. At least not right then. And the source says he followed that up with gratitude.
Yeah, expressing thanks for their support, throughout the season. And specifically saying he knew how difficult it must have been for them.
Acknowledging their endurance, basically. Okay, so he owns the failure, thanks the fans who stuck around. But the core message, the bit the article really focuses on, it's about the future and a choice.
Exactly. This is where, it becomes this potential flashpoint, a debate almost.
How so?
The source quotes him saying, the season is done, it's in the past. And then he lays out this really stark choice, this dichotomy for the fans, and probably the club too.
Okay.
He says, we stay stuck in the past. We fight each other, or we stick together and move forward.
Wow, that's pretty direct. Fight each other or stick together?
It really is. It's not just hoping for unity. He's framing it as like an active decision they have to make. A challenge, almost.
Yeah, that stick together or fight line. You can feel the tension in that moment, can't you? After so much disappointment, fighting, frustration, that's a real risk.
Totally. He's naming that risk of, internal conflict and saying unity is the alternative, the way forward. It kind of forces you to think, how does a fan base even make that choice?
It does. And digging into the source a bit more, there's this really interesting contrast the article brings up. It reminds us about something Amorim said earlier.
Oh, yeah?
Back in November, right after he took charge. Remember those first 3 games? 2 wins, 1 draw. Things looked, okay for a minute.
Right, a decent start, results-wise.
And back then, he apparently said, the storm is coming.
He predicted a storm when things were relatively calm.
Seems so, according to this report. Which makes what he says now, after the actual disastrous season, even more pointed.
Okay, so what's the new forecast? After apologizing for the disaster.
Well, the article quotes him right there on the pitch after the Villa game. Today, after this disastrous season, I want to tell you the good days are coming.
Whoa. So a complete turnaround. From storm is coming to good days are coming.
Exactly. A massive shift in the public message.
That's bold. How does he justify that optimism, according to the source? Why should anyone believe him after what they just went through?
Well, he doesn't seem to point to, tactical changes or new signings mentioned here. Instead, he roots it in the club's identity. It's history.
Ah, the historical argument.
Precisely. The quote is something like, if there is one club in the world that proves in the past that it can overcome any situation, any disaster, it's our club. It's Manchester United Football Club.
So he's banking on legacy, on resilience being in the club's DNA.
That seems to be the angle presented in the source, yeah. It's less about concrete plans for the team in that moment and more about invoking this powerful narrative of, past glories and overcoming adversity.
That's a classic leadership tactic after failure, isn't it? Tap into that collective memory, try to shift the focus from the present pain to, well, historical pride, maybe.
It definitely is a psychological pivot. Whether it lands, of course, after a season called a disaster, that's the question.
Yeah, and the source adds another layer, too. It mentions he also apologized to his players during this address.
It does. Said he was sometimes unfair, but always tried to be honest. Which, hints that maybe things weren't always smooth internally either.
Right. Adds another dimension to the challenges he faced.
Yeah.
And just to really hammer home how bad things had gotten, that Villa win.
Yeah.
The report points out it was their first Premier League win since March, beating Leicester 3-0.
March. Wow. So yeah, a long, long winless run in the league leading up to that final day really shows the depth of the struggle.
Definitely puts the disastrous label into sharp focus. Okay, so you've got this very emotional address, apology, thanks, the stark choice, the forecast flip based on history.
The apology to players.
Right, but the article doesn't just leave it on sentiment. It mentions concrete next steps, too.
It does. It says right after the match and the speech, the club announced actual plans. A 32-man squad for a postseason trip to Asia was confirmed.
Ah, okay. Getting straight back to business, sort of.
Yeah, friendlies scheduled. Asian All-Stars in Kuala Lumpur on May 28th, then the Hong Kong national team on May 30th.
Interesting juxtaposition. You have the big emotional call to move forward, and then immediately, here are the very practical, physical steps of, well, moving forward.
Yeah.
Literally getting on a plane.
Exactly. It shows that process isn't just words. It's also about the logistics, the planning, the actual actions the club takes next,
Yeah.
even if it's just preseason stuff initially.
So let's synthesize this based on the source. We've got Amorim, end of a truly awful season 15th, cup final loss, that long winless streak. He faces the fans,
Starts with apology and thanks, crucially.
then hits them with that choice. Stay stuck and fight, or unite and move forward.
Flips the script from his earlier storm prediction to good days are coming, basing it entirely on the club's historical resilience.
Throws in an apology to his players, and all this happens just as the club announces, okay, we're off to Asia next week.
Yeah, it's a really complex moment, isn't it? Trying to manage that fallout, acknowledge the sheer depth of the failure, but also somehow pivot towards hope.
It really highlights the pressure, trying to rebuild belief using, well, the tools you have. In this case, history and a direct challenge to the fan base's unity.
And it brings us right back to that challenge he laid out, that choice.
Stick together and move forward versus stay stuck in the past and fight each other.
So thinking about that, after a season the source itself calls disastrous, what does that actually mean for a fan base, for a club, to navigate that?
Yeah, how do you genuinely make that shift? How do you move from dwelling on such a recent, painful past towards a future that's only been promised based on, well, history and a plea for unity? What are the real challenges for you, the supporter, and for the club in actually making that choice?